How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation, and in today's video, you guessed it, we've got three topics to cover. Starting out with Sony just did their big investor call, so they revealed a lot about the current state of the PlayStation 5, but they also revealed that they're moving on from the PlayStation 5, and people are pretty disappointed about that, but I'm just going to try to explain their thinking because it's not the worst thing in the world. Then we're going to talk about how they did reveal that cloud gaming is not the future and why that's exciting to me personally. And finally, we get to talk about why multi-platform is not working out and why Sony is smart to not fully invest in it like their competitors. So yeah, let's jump into the first news story here. It's kind of a bummer that the only time we actually get to hear from Sony directly is when they're addressing their shareholders. We're the reason Sony is working. We're the ones spending our money on their products. We're the ones playing their games. And it really does seem like this generation was all about the shareholders. They're just dead set on increasing revenue, which explains why they're so focused on live service games like Concord, Helldivers, and everything else. But there has to be a happy middle ground where you're increasing revenue and you're also impressing your shareholders. It just sucks that increasing revenue, it means making games for people who, play Fortnite or like Apex Legends or sports games and not really your hardcore fan base that are the reason you're really in business to this day. We're the reason that the PlayStation console is a success and is where it's at. So they kind of got to do a little bit of give and take when they work on the live service games for the normies that increase the revenue tenfold. They also got to make sure that they're supporting us as well. But the big news bite that came out of this investor call is that the PS6 for them is quote unquote top of mind. They're moving on from the PlayStation 5. They've got it in a spot where they feel they've done pretty much everything they can on it, and it's time to focus on the next generation. But they also acknowledge that they're really looking at this next generation differently than they have with the past generations like the PS3, PS4, and even to some extent the PS5. It all comes down to the big metric that's really driven this generation for everyone, which is engagement. There's a lot of different things you can do at any given time. You can pull out your phone and scroll through X. You can pull out your phone and scroll through Instagram Reels or TikTok. You can boot up your PlayStation 5. You can boot up your PC. You can boot up your Steam Deck. You can boot up your Nintendo Switch 2. The big economy is people's attention right now, and that is the buzzword engagement. They want people to stay in the PlayStation ecosystem, which means PS6 is going to be a focus, but it's going to be a similar generation to this one and even more focused on the idea that this one kind of spawned, which is they're going to keep the PS5 around as long as possible. They reiterated so many times in this call that the PS4 is still a viable console for them. They have people booting it up every single day, buying and playing games on it, whether it's live service or single player games, and they want to keep that around as long as possible. But this time around, they kind of thought forward into the future with things like the PS5 Pro and making the PS5 actually powerful. So while the PS4 is well past its prime, and I feel legitimately bad for anyone who's still spending time gaming on that thing, the PS5 has untapped potential, I think. I think when developers actually sit down and focus on getting games optimized and actually, fully working on the PlayStation 5, it really does show up and do a good job with the games that are actually, finished when they do release. So if we can get developers to kind of actually finish their games, I don't think it's going to be as detrimental to continue to support the PlayStation 5 going into the next generation. I mean, honestly, it's really working like the iPhone sort of generations now, where they come out with an iPhone every year and they're very iterative. Like there's one buzzword feature they come out with, like that new action button on the iPhone 14. I don't even know what the big feature was on the 15 because I stuck with my 14 Pro Max, and I will for another couple years, I think, because it works just fine. I think your best bet right now is to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro, especially if you're on a PS4, upgrade to the Pro and hang on to that thing as long as possible. They've confirmed that they're going to continue supporting both the PS5 and the Pro going into the PS6 generation. And while you do get a little bit of a drop off playing the PS4 versions of games like Horizon Forbidden West or God of War Ragnarok, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, if you're on PS4, you're already used to 30 FPS gaming and you're barely used to that. I mean, the PS4 was a 25 to 30 FPS console for all intents and purposes. So if you get the Pro now, yeah, you're going to be introduced to 60 FPS gaming and everything it has to offer, but you'll get a really good experience at 30 FPS graphically speaking. So if that's what you're going for, stick with that and then wait for the PS6 Pro. Like, get on the Pro sort of upgrade cycle, because then you'll always have the best possible option when it does come time to upgrade your device. And we know with the PS6 generation, they're expanding the ecosystem even further with a handheld. I mean, if they cover all the bases, you get the PS4 people to hang on as long as they possibly can. You get the PS5 people to hang on a little bit longer than they traditionally would have. You get the PS5 Pro people involved. Then you've got the PS6 people and the handheld people. I mean, that's every base covered, right? Like, you even have the PS Portal to get the very few streaming people out there playing on it. And like, at that point, what other market do you have to go for? At that point, you really just start focusing on games and using your audience that you've built up. And I'd argue that's why people are so disappointed hearing about the PlayStation 6. They just haven't been there with the games. There have been good games. Like, I'm not saying there's been bad games. I actually play a lot of games and I have been having a lot of fun. I mean, Night Rain is incredibly slept on by games journalists. It's actually insane because it's such a complete package that looks and runs awesome. I'm having so much fun with it. It's the most fun I've had with a game this year. And I'm playing the Lies of P DLC. I'm going back and playing the original Dying Light. I'm hyped for Dying Light the Beast. I'm playing Resident Evil 3 on my Steam Deck. Like, I have so many games going on right now that it's not even funny. But if you look at the PS4 generation or even the PS3 generation, Sony's first party right now is lacking. They've got too many resources devoted to live service games. And honestly, if you're a core gamer, even if you're not going to play the live service stuff, you should really hope that one takes off, because then it's done. Once they get one that they can really focus on and make a live game that they upgrade and update into perpetuity forever, then they don't have to spend money on other ones. You can't have multiple live service games, because the paradox is they make a lot of money, but they also cost a lot of money to keep running. So having more than one that you have all of your focus into, they know that that's like a deathbed situation. Like, you can't do that. It's just diminishing returns at that point. So if they get one that really is successful, then they can move the needle back to single player games and continue supporting what people like us actually want to keep playing on the PlayStation 5. And the way they fund those games is through live service. There just aren't enough sales on the first party single player stuff to make the business profitable and generate enough revenue to keep the investors happy. So if they get one hit, that's all they need. Unfortunately, they seem to be incapable of making a decent live service game after, Concord, Destiny 2 falling off a cliff, Marathon being an asset flip by accident because they stole a lot of assets over at Bungie, and now Fair Games, the studio head, leaving. Like, they can't really catch a break. And then they let Arrowhead go instead of just buying them and spending the money that they want to become a first party studio. They let them go make a multi-platform next game after Helldivers 2. I don't know what the philosophy was there, but yeah, I hope they get one live service game so I can stop talking about the future of live service at Sony and we can get back on track with the first party stuff. So I understand why people are disappointed, because, if you were a PS4 gamer, you had a lot of great first party games, too many to list, but it's the reality of the situation that's been created. I mean, we are in a gaming crash right now. It's crazy. I don't know how exactly I would handle it, but I understand the philosophy of making one big live service game that funds everything else. I just hope they can actually do it, because if they fail over and over again, there's not going to be any games, and that's when we're going to see a lot more multi-platform stuff coming out. But on the positive side, they did kind of go to bat for consumers. They said, look, a lot of companies like Microsoft and Nintendo and, Nvidia with GeForce Now, they're going fully into the streaming realm. They would love to get streaming to be the only way to play games, obviously, because that's the best way for them to control every aspect from top to bottom. It completely eliminates the used market. It gives them the ability to just delete games from the store and make it, the future that they've always wanted, where you are only renting your games, or at least renting the ability to play your games. But they told investors, look, our customers like playing games that they download. They like playing games natively on their consoles. They like playing games natively on their handhelds. So while we have seen moderate success with something like the PS Portal, it is by no means where we see the future going. We are continuing to meet people where they're at. On the physical game side of things, unfortunately, it seems like that's just going to become a boutique thing from now on. There are companies doing it, like limited run games, as much as they suck ass. There's a few of them. You know what I'm talking about. These boutique physical game companies that really came up during the Switch era, where you could get carts of games like Hotline Miami and Hotline Miami 2. You know, like stuff like that is really coming up. And I feel like that's where the future is heading there, especially with Microsoft being dicks about this constantly and putting like no data on the disc. It's a glorified license. I just saw that the Outer Worlds on Xbox, the Outer Worlds 2, I mean, is going to be a game case with the digital code in it, like the PC games you used to get at Target back in the day for Steam. If Xbox wants to just careen their whole goodwill off a cliff, that's fine. I don't really care about Xbox games at the end of the day, outside of like Gears, I guess, but like at least Sony is doing a decent job with the physical games. I think digital games is a good middle ground where you can at least download them to your console. You can play them for the most part offline if you set it as your primary console and go offline on your PS5, but it's still better at the end of the day than streaming your games, which is not good. I don't like streaming, and I don't think people really understand how bad for the industry that is. Always look at what Ubisoft is doing, like with The Crew, for example. They were way ahead of the curve with The Crew being an always online game. Then they just wait until the exact moment where there's not enough people to actually have meaningful controversy or blowback if they turn that game off. They shut the game down. They took your 60 or 70 bucks and they ran with it. They said, thanks for the money. You can't play this game anymore. That's the future that companies like Microsoft would love to get to, where they can just shut off a game when it's not profitable anymore and say, sorry, you were just renting it from the get-go. So that's why I don't like streaming. So I'm glad to see Sony kind of fighting back and saying, look, they can go do streaming if they want. We're going to support it to an extent, but we're not going to make it the focus of our industry. And now we get to the Jimmy vindication part of the video. If you guys remember, I hammered this pretty hard back when we heard that the full slate of Final Fantasy games was coming to the Xbox platform. I'm talking stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm talking stuff like Final Fantasy 16. Square Enix didn't make enough money on those games and they blamed it on the PlayStation exclusivity. I criticized them pretty heavily at the time because that's stupid. You got to meet your fans where they're at. If your fans are asking for turn-based games like Persona 5, like Expedition 33, those are the games you should be trying to make. You should make other games in the action combat realm to meet that audience that kind of play like Devil May Cry. Like if they made a Final Fantasy spin-off that played like Devil May Cry and didn't call it Final Fantasy 16 and gave it a less big budget, like, you know, you don't give it the first party size budget that you would give a mainline Final Fantasy game, I think it would have done just fine, honestly. But when you go for a new audience with an existing IP that has a core audience that wants one specific thing, you're not going to sell the game. So when everyone was saying the key to this is Xbox players want Final Fantasy, they want to buy these games, I was like, that's stupid, because it is stupid. They didn't buy Final Fantasy 15 on Xbox One. Why would they show up for Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy 7 Remake? And now that those games are out, shocker, I was right. The guessing is coming from a new analyst firm that honestly has been pretty spot on. So while they are, you know, like guessing for the most part based on data that they have, they seem to be within an acceptable ballpark when it comes to predicting how many games have been sold in a specific title. And it's not good. Final Fantasy 16 seems to have only sold 22,000 copies on the Xbox platform. Like anyone with a, you know, passing knowledge of what's going on in the games industry could have predicted that. It's not the multi-platform that was killing the Final Fantasy franchise. It was the fact that they were going for a different audience. And if you put that game on a platform, the Xbox platform, where people have been trained for the better part of a decade to not buy games, because even if a game isn't on Game Pass day one, if they don't buy it, it'll eventually come to Game Pass because that's the only option the publishers have to recoup some of their dev cost. They're not going to buy the game. You can count the amount of Final Fantasy in general releases on one hand, and if you look at the ones that have been released, most of them were not day one. I mean, like, there's no audience there for Final Fantasy to begin with, and then you bring games over that don't support the audience that is there. This never had a hope of selling well on Xbox. So when you see people being like, oh, Xbox players want to play these games, they don't. They might want to play them for free on Game Pass, maybe, but at that point, they're going to download it, play it for 5 minutes, and delete it. I mean, go look at any Game Pass game and look at people's achievements that they've gotten in these games. Like, you can go to the first achievement that you get in a game and look at the percentage of players who have gotten it. It's below 1% the vast majority of the time. So while, yeah, it is cool that you can just download and play whatever game is on Game Pass, it's the same paradox that things like Netflix create. The willingness to invest and actually actually playing the stuff that you can download for free is so much lower. I mean, people have to be hooked instantly to even get past the first achievement, and these games just aren't doing it. I say this even when it benefits me, like with Final Fantasy. I like the action ones because, you know, I don't play turn-based games all that often. I play Pokemon, and that's about the extent of it, if I'm being real with you guys. I like that they supported me with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. I think those games are great, but if they wanted them to be massively successful, I mean, look at how successful Expedition 33 is. It's supporting the audience that is there for like Persona 5. They came right over and played Expedition 33, and it exceeded expectations. So they probably should have gone for the turn-based audience from the jump. The best example for me is Resident Evil. Resident Evil 7 is my favorite Resident Evil after 4. It brought it back to its roots while also remaining slightly actiony. It's an FPS at the end of the day, but it's legitimately the scariest Resident Evil. I mean, putting you in the Baker Mansion, a small enclosed space in the middle of the bayou, you feel like you're in a different part of America where society doesn't really care what's going on, and it's awesome. I play it once a year. It's that good. It transcends the Resident Evil franchise, but it also brought new people into the mix who are very similar to Silent Hill fans. You know, the people who want it on a t-shirt, like a Metallica t-shirt for people who don't listen to Metallica. They go on Twitter, they shit people, they say this is my stan or whatever, like, you know, Zoomers, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know how old these people are, but they're the worst kind of fans because they don't actually play the stuff. They want the aesthetic of it. It's kind of like the Dead by Daylight version of Resident Evil, where like, yeah, Freddy and Michael Myers are in Dead by Daylight, but it's the worst versions. You get the resurrection Michael Myers, you get the remake Freddy where he sucks ass. That's the kind of fan who bitched and moaned to Capcom that Resident Evil 7, a horror game, was too scary, and then they said, okay, we'll support that audience with Village. And while it is good, I had fun playing through it once. It's the one I've never returned to. I have no urge to go back and play it. The last time I played Resident Evil Village was when I played the DLC that totally sucked, and I'm pretty sure it sold less than Resident Evil 7, so now it seems like they learned their lesson. They got the guy who directed 7 to do 9. They say it's going to be slightly actiony, but they've called it the most intense, engrossing, and immersive Resident Evil game ever. They put a zombie in the art for once, like, wow, shocker, that's going to get people excited. They called back to the old Resident Evils with it, you know, that acid wash sort of art design. It's a horror franchise. Support horror fans and people will show up. So when you're making games, it doesn't matter if they're exclusive, it helps. It doesn't matter if they're multi-platform, that helps in some ways. Support the audience that you've grown with that IP, and I'm sure people will show up day one. You don't even have to convince them at that point. But when you come out of left field with a game like Resident Evil Village, or a game like Resident Evil 6, or a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you then have to convince your core audience to play it, and at that point the battle is lost. So yeah, I hope the 22,000 Xbox people who bought Final Fantasy 16 enjoy it, but that was never the right move for Square Enix. I mean, I said that was stupid from the start. Here's the fruits of my labor, I guess, and bitching about it because I was right. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this one. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.